had the joy of having a short conversation with him about his next talk. So I'm super excited to have the honor of introducing JJ Asghar. JJ is a developer advocate at IBM. You might have heard of it. It's a very big company. And he accidentally created a serverless application. So I'm super excited to hear about this. Perhaps some of you are actually on this journey as well, and you might not even know it. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about his journey into accidentally creating a serverless application. I'm going to give it up to JJ.
So unfortunately, I have to prove to my boss that I'm actually presenting. So if you wouldn't mind taking a picture of this, this QR code, it goes to all my executives at IBM to say that JJ is actually here. If you didn't know, I'm a Texan, so I do say y'all, and I can talk and have a nice little southern drawl. But again, if you've taken a picture of this, thank you. It just sends you just some things about something called Watson X, the shirt I'm wearing. But it's not actually what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about how we accidentally created a serverless application. Now, you're probably wondering, wait, what? How do you accidentally create an application, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. You usually have some idea of what you're going to do. Well, it turns out, as a developer advocate, one of the things I have to do is teach people really, really hard things in a constructive way. Like, I taught OpenShift and Kubernetes all over the world to multiple people. And we had to build something called workshops, right? The ability to get a Kubernetes cluster up and running. If you didn't know, first of all, IBM has a cloud called IBM Cloud. That's supposed to be a joke. Nobody laughed. That's fine. And the cloud is designed and was built off of something called SoftLayer, which was actually a co-locating company. If you go to AWS or Azure, they have really easy ways to do disposable infrastructure, right? Like, you can spin up a cluster or whatever and destroy it, not a big problem. IBM Cloud is actually designed to be more production-like. It's not designed to be ephemeral. So I had to figure out a way to get all these ephemeral clusters up and running in a way. So that's the story. So as I said, our problem is this: we have to find a way to call out to all these different APIs to request Kubernetes clusters or OpenShift clusters. I'm going to use OpenShift and Kubernetes interchangeably. In essence, they're the same thing, but it's important to recognize that. So, by the way, I am a YouTuber and a streamer, so I'm very used to people asking me questions. So if you actually have a question while I'm speaking, don't hesitate to raise your hand, and I will have no problem by detouring off to that conversation too. I'm very scatterbrained like that. So, of course, with every single thing, you have to iterate on stuff, right? I was a production engineer, which eventually became a DevOps engineer, which became a SRE, all of that jazz. So I naturally gravitate towards infrastructure. And most of these people in this room, who considers himself a true developer, like I write code all day? Okay. How many people consider themselves more operations? Like, I want to spin up a VM or a cluster or something like that on AWS. Okay. Well, interestingly enough, the people who raised their hands the second time, this will be more relevant to you instead of the developers as a whole. But hopefully our friends on the developer side can respect this kind of conversation, because you'll see this. There's a huge chance you've actually been on this journey and you don't recognize it. So with every single system administrator out there, they usually know two languages. One, which is Bash, right? Good old Bash. And the other one is probably Python. Well, IBM Cloud, excuse me, just like AWS, just like Azure, has a CLI. It's called IBM Cloud, surprisingly enough. And you can call IBM Cloud to spin up portions on the cloud for you. And what we ended up doing was literally writing a for loop. This is literally the code we ran to request a cluster at the time, a 3-node cluster, version 1.2.2.2. I know that's old, leave me alone. And we would just run this n number of times we had to do, right? This is not really secret. It's literally a for loop. But this is how we would spin up n number of clusters, anywhere ranging from 1 to 200 clusters on IBM Cloud. If you notice, they have this private and public VLAN thing right there. That's actually one of the biggest problems with the software infrastructure, because we actually had to figure out the VLANs on top of it. We couldn't just add like random, like just throw this into this VPC or whatever. No, we actually had to find a way to find the VLANs. That one took a really long time to figure out. So as you can see, this is probably not great, right? Like, this isn't good. Why would you use a for loop to spin up possibly 200 clusters? There's also, like, I would have to sit there and wait for it. This could take literally 8 to 24 hours to run. Do I really want to sit in front of my laptop for 24 hours? No. I mean, homeboy over here probably does. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But the idea is there's something better, right? Well, unfortunately, there wasn't. As you see here, this was the second iteration of this, right? Where we ended up realizing that there was a tagging system inside of IBM Cloud, and we were able to do some. But if you notice up in that corner, or up in the top, there's this little sleep. I discovered when I was running this script, and I would push it against the IBM Cloud, or I'm sorry, the cloud that I was using, I overran it. And I might have caused a global outage, and that was bad. I got some SREs coming to me from the cloud that IBM owns, and they're like, JJ, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm just spinning up clusters. They're like, you took down the cloud. How did you do that? Well, it turns out we basically just hit the API too hard. So I ended up putting a sleep in there, and everything was fine. Because, you know, as a developer, right, all you need is a sleep. Someone's giggling over there. That's good. Cool. So obviously, this doesn't scale, right? Like, this is not great. We were able to push out at least background the information. It was fine, whatever. Cool. Well, we ended up coming to the Ansible. There's got to be a better way to do this. So we went to the Ansible IBM Cloud plugin. If you actually go out to Galaxy for Ansible, it still exists. It's not good. It's actually really bad. It didn't even do Kubernetes for us, which was very, very frustrating. Of course, the open source thing to do would have been for us to add to the community plugin, but it wasn't being supported at the time. So we couldn't actually do it. At this time also, IBM was buying Red Hat. So it seemed like a logical step for us to do this. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, which was frustrating. So of course, what do? You end up with Terraform, like everybody does, right? Hey, there we go, I got someone laughing. Perfect, yes, I win. But you know, you always end up going down this path, right? You're like, oh, you know, Ansible isn't doing what I expect. I want state, let's do Terraform. Well, unfortunately, this time, we started running workshops all over the world, and I was running multiple workshops a week. And now I have to manage multiple state files for multiple different clusters, and groupings of clusters, and it just became insanely complex. So Terraform actually had a scaling problem with all these different ephemeral infrastructures. So we didn't stick with it. Because we went back to Ansible. We ended up doing was we ended up writing our own Ansible plugin that all it did was call out to the IBM backend to request Kubernetes clusters for us, because the community plugin didn't do it. Now you're probably saying, JJ, why didn't you just, you know, upstream it? Well, at the time, it just didn't happen because nobody was supporting it. So we ended up writing our own with a way of open source, right? That was supposed to be a joke. So obviously, running a little bit of Ansible here and there is fine, but now you need some way to deal with multiple different infrastructures. And we ended up with something called AWX. Does anyone know what AWX is? More quite importantly, who knows what Ansible Tower is? No? Nothing? OK. So Ansible Tower is a command and control piece of software. If you ever run Ansible, you usually run it from your laptop, and it spits out to the cluster or the backends or whatever that you're talking to, and it does the configuration management. Well, that's great if you're one developer. But all of a sudden, you have a team of developers doing it. You need some way of a command and control so you can have all the same playbooks, all the same code in one location, and it goes out for you. And that's what Ansible Tower is. Ansible Tower is great. It is wonderful. Unfortunately, it is insanely expensive. Insanely expensive. But AWX is the upstream free version. So in the Red Hat model, they always open their open source stuff, so we ended up using AWX. By the way, do not use AWX. It is a nightmare to set up. We ended up writing something called kubeadmin on top of it, which allowed us to control a bunch of different clusters. And I'm going to skip past that because I'm recognizing my time. Because I want to actually get to the serverless part of this. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about something called cloud functions. Now, I did imply that we were running multiple workshops a week now. But you have to understand, we had a pipeline of stuff. I'm only one human, right? And I need to do this all over the world for multiple times. I live in Austin, Texas. I have workshops happening in Tokyo. I have it happening in Bangalore. I'm not going to wake up 8 hours before the workshop has to happen in Bangalore and run all this stuff. So I needed some way to create a pipeline for this. We ended up using something called IBM Cloud Functions. Now you're starting to see where the serverless stuff is coming in here, to start scraping our GitHub Enterprise instance to start getting issues out of it and start requesting against it. And you'll see the code here in just a second. So I need to actually take a quick aside and talk about something called schematics. Unfortunately, I can't seem to find the logo for the life of me, so that's the reason why it's all right, so they're called schematics. But I did imply a little while ago with Terraform, when you have multiple different state files, you start having problems with scaling and being able to control all those different state files. Schematics from IBM is actually a way to control all of those state files in the cloud with IBM. Best part about it, it's free. So if you ever have multiple different state files you need to worry about for Terraform, schematics is well worth looking into it. That might be a bit of a knock to Terraform Enterprise, but I'm not going to say that out loud. Again, I forget this is recorded. So now we played with some cloud functions, and what we ended up coming up to is something called Code Engine. The beauty of Code Engine is it's a unified serverless platform. So if you play with AWS with like Lambda and their serverless functions and their container service, you have to have multiple different services talking to one another. It's not just one unified dashboard. The advantage of Code Engine is it's built off of Istio, which is open source, and is a unified platform, which is really, really fun. It's great, and it's all built off of open source software, so you actually see the beauty of it. And we ended up using it for the next iteration of this. So right here is actually what we ended up creating. As you hear, I talk about kubeadmin and AWX. You see the cloud functions, so that GitHub validator is the way to actually pull this stuff in. We have this GitHub Enterprise instance where we actually put that issue in. So this is kind of the workflow. The actor would put in an issue. The validator from the serverless function would actually read it. Then we had some Code Engine APIs that would take some of this information, shove it into either Terraform or AWX, and spin up the clusters. As you see, from a bash script, we accidentally ended up creating a serverless platform, right? Like, this is what we ended up doing. We didn't have to worry about it. So what is that? It's a Rube Goldberg machine, right? What is the serverless platform in general? It becomes a Rube Goldberg machine. That was supposed to be a joke, and nobody laughed. Great. So let's actually see some of this code so you can kind of see where I was going with this. That's not it. Maybe. Hang on. This is just angry. Hang on. The whole point of this talk is to show this code off. So give me 2 seconds here. Right here. Oops. So the first thing I'm going to show you here is the cloud requests. So right here, this actual little part of the serverless app, if you can see it, it basically did a bunch of JSON requests to our a specific repo on GitHub Enterprise. It would strip out all this information. You can actually steal a lot of this code, which is really nice. It would pull it across and then shove it into a right down here. it would actually send a message, which was a post call to an API. And the API, which is right here, this API is literally this. Now, hopefully, some of the developers here saw the joke. What is that? Yes, we just wrote a wrapper around bash. No, nothing? Okay. Well, the idea is we literally just wrote a wrapper around bash, right? So we started with a bash script, and we ended up writing a bunch of Python in front of Flask, or using Flask to talk to bash to be able to call out to the API. The best part about what this was is that we now it scales horizontally, right? So instead of us just hitting the API over and over again, this one would spin up a bunch of serverless apps horizontally and send it out. So that was fun. Let's see here. If you want to take a look at some of the issues. Did I already have this one? I did already have this one open right here. So as you can see, we had 605 of these clusters, 605 of these workshops actually ran. And we would actually put this in, right? Like we'd make sure that there was a serverless, all the different start time and the end time, how many cluster numbers we had, what type of cluster type, what type of workers, the size, and the region. So now I didn't have to take anything, right? Because I had that, the cron issue tracker that would scrape it and then send that API call, all of a sudden this would actually happen for me automatically, which was really, really nice. As you can see, it pulled all the information out, and there was no issues, and then it would just push it out. So if you take oops, that's the wrong one. If you take a look at, right here. Oh, that was very, very big. So as you see, there's detected issues here. Another really nice part about this whole thing is that we were able to do some error checking inside of the issues. We discovered that certain people would be like, hey, JJ, I'm expecting, 100 people at my workshop. I'm like, you don't really think you're going to have 100 people at your workshop, do you? They're like, no, actually, all right, fine. I'm expecting like 20. I'm like, okay, cool. 100 clusters is a lot of money. 20, not so much. Well, what I ended up doing is I ended up being able to cap the, through using this process, as you see here in a moment, I was able to put checks against stuff. For instance, like, check, was it 4? No. Here we go, check 5. If you assume you can read that. Let me see if I make that a little bit bigger. I wanted to make sure that, the clusters were less than 75. Right, so I wanted to make sure people didn't just spin up 100 clusters all of a sudden. So I didn't have to check it anymore. I didn't have to get an email or anything. The bot actually did the work for me, which was really nice. So I realize this is a whirlwind term, but again, the whole point I'm trying to show you is that you might actually have a bunch of these scripts out there that you're already doing. All you need to do is just wrap this in some very basic Python and then shove it up into some type of serverless platform, ideally code engine. So, long story short, was this worth it, right? Like, honestly, probably not. I actually lost a lot of engineering time in dealing with this thing. And there would have probably been better ways to do this. And my team actually grew out to about 15 people at one point. I started with just me running a bash script. And at the peak, when we were running these, I had 15 people working in this whole platform. That's a lot of people and a lot of engineering time, about half to 3/4 of their time dealing with workshops. It's a great little kind of microcosm of how a project can kind of go on the wrong path and all of a sudden, have more details. So hopefully the one thing you learn out of all this is that serverless is a path. You can use it. There is functions that you can make things happen, but you should take a moment back and look to see if it's actually worth it or not. So again, thank you for your time. I'm coming up to 6 minutes here. I really do have that email address. You can find me on Twitter and whatnot, at JJ Asghar. And I actually have a whole blog post about this thing too. which goes into more details with links and all that stuff, and probably things I probably shouldn't have shown you on recordings here, but they're all old, so it's not a big deal. So thank y'all.
Oh, hi. Okay, great. So any questions? Anyone? I mean, it was a great presentation with a lot covered.
Yeah. I'm a Pisces, by the way.
Oh, cool. I'm an Aquarius.
There
Should we
you
go
go.
around asking everyone what they are as well? Amazing. So I have a question for
Sure.
you. How do you like Dubai, right?
Actually, so this is my first time ever in Dubai. Frankly, in this actual region. This is the first time I've ever been here. And as an American, I've been told very specific things about this part of the world. All of them are wrong.
Really?
Minus all the Ferraris and Lamborghinis. They're still everywhere. They're still everywhere. But I have been told as an American some very specific things through the media and things like that, which has just completely painted Dubai and this area as a whole in a completely different light. And I really, really hope I can come back next year and enjoy GITEX again, because I've fallen in love with the city.
100%. I totally agree. I am biased, though, as I did grow up here. And another question for you. As a developer advocate, I love the role. I actually didn't know what a developer advocate was until maybe about 2 years ago. And I was like, why do people have developer and avocados in their Twitter bios or X bios? So now that I know this role, I mean, I'm so jealous of the work you get to do. You get to, of course, learn the tech, but then go around and talk about the tech as well. Do we have any developer advocates here today? We have one. Amazing. So yes, if you don't know about the role, do check it out. It is definitely a fun one. And I think Victoria is a developer advocate as well. She did the first talk for AWS.
Yeah, so the best way to describe a developer advocate to most people, especially to like my parents who don't understand anything about tech, is I'm a personable nerd, right? Like
Exactly.
I'm just supposed to be nice, and I know the technology behind it, and I just make really, really, really hard things make sense to the masses.
And do you find that I know you said that you're a YouTuber and you stream live on Twitch, is that correct?
I did for quite a while, yeah.
How do you find that has helped you personally as a developer, especially, you know, in communication? And I mean, I think that's something that I also learned from running a YouTube channel. Before I was just a software developer, and learning to talk technically about things. I mean, for me, my technical talk has increased massively.
Honestly, yes. The ability for you to improvise quickly and be able to answer questions, and anything ranging from when you're streaming on whatever platform you're doing, and you're working on a really hard Kubernetes problem, and you're like, oh, I'm going to figure this out. Oh, it's the Nginx settings. I've got this all of a sudden. And then you get a question that says, hey, JJ, what's a cloud? And you're like, oh, I'm out of the flow. Oh, God, okay. Let me answer what is a cloud? Okay, it's a way to be able to run systems in a big, like a distributed way. Can you ask more questions? Okay, what else are you doing in Kubernetes? It is a really great way to pivot conversations fast.
Yeah, and what a great explanation into what the cloud is as well.
I might have some practice.
Amazing. And yes, for those who are wondering about your YouTube channel or your Twitch, do you want to do a shout out of them? I don't know if that was covered before.
Oh, yeah, no, it's just at JJ Asghar. But honestly, the best way to get a hold of me is through my email address of awesome@ibm.com. It really is me. You send an email right now, it'll come right to my phone. My job is to be accessible, and my job is to be basically to make your life easier as developers for IBM. Because honestly, it's been hard in the past, right? Working with IBM, and my job is to make it easier for you.
Amazing.